It's the top studio Genesis albums of all time based on your votes. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Book. Now, when we talk about top albums, this is based on a poll that we had last year, which we wanted to get ready for the 50th anniversary of Genesis, which is 2018. We wrote down every single Genesis song ever recorded from the EPs, but not from live albums. Like Three Sides Live, the US edition, had a few extra songs. We put those on there. So we tabulated a list, and after releasing the top 25 Genesis songs of all time, we thought, let's go a little deeper into Genesis. Let's look at all the votes and come up with the top albums. There are some real surprises when we tabulated everything together. I think you'll be surprised. You may not be by number one, but first let's look at some songs that didn't get any votes. There were only a few. Open Door from 1982 and Three Sides Live, Uncertain Weather and Small Talk from 1997, Calling All Stations. And the only songs that got votes from the first Genesis album, From Genesis to Revelation, were Silent Sun, Am I Very Wrong, The Conqueror, and The Serpent. Nothing else did. They were still sort of coming up with their sound at that point anyway. And as we get to this, I think most Genesis fans will not be surprised by the two albums that got the least amount of votes based on song votes. Number 17, From Genesis to Revelation, their first album from 1969. Now with each album, we're going to show you the breakdown. The first number is where the song came in, and the second number is how many votes it received in the overall standings. We'll also feature all the Genesis members who performed on any particular album. Number 16, go on any Facebook group that talks about Genesis, and you'll find people who truly appreciated Ray Wilson replacing Phil Collins as lead singer in the latter part of their career. But when push came to shove, when you asked people to vote for songs from Calling All Stations, they went for more of the earlier prog stuff with Gabriel and the first few Phil Collins sung albums. Number 15, Three Sides Live, a live project with a few extra tracks if you look at the US version at least. It was, you might recall, not Paper Late that got the most votes. Number 14, the EP Spot the Pigeon, which would be the last real studio outing with guitarist Steve Hackett in the group. It was also a clear sign of where the band was going. Recorded during the wind and weathering sessions, only the slower Inside Out would have really made it on that album. Number 13, We Can't Dance, 1991. It only received 243 votes, and we're talking out of 11,836, which is odd since it and Invisible Touch are the two biggest selling Genesis albums of all time. We Can't Dance went 5 times platinum in Germany and the UK, 4 times platinum in the US. The project delivered 4 hits in the UK, 5 in the US, and No Son of Mine and I Can't Dance both reached the top 10. But when we asked true Genesis fans to vote for their favorite songs, they didn't pick the songs or the hit singles off these projects. Which brings us to Invisible Touch at number 12. It was the band's official biggest selling album in the US, going 6 times platinum, with each one of the 5 singles going into the top 10, and the title tune hitting number 1. Like the album We Can't Dance, it clearly reached past regular fans of the band, and obviously playing to a much wider audience, which in some cases probably knew nothing about their early prog beginnings. And the singles were good, but they were pop, not prog. Number 11, Abacab, which seems appropriate since it was their 11th studio album. They were drifting further away from their prog beginnings. In fact, it was the first Genesis album to ever feature 4 singles. It was the band's first project to ever go double platinum in the US. It went gold in the UK, Germany, and France. The highest charting tunes on the project were In England, the title tune, which peaked at number 9, and in the US, No Reply at All, which reached number 28. Number 10, And Then There Were 3, the first album without longtime guitarist Steve Hackett. To many fans, it really showed too. It's not that Mike Rutherford was a bad guitarist, he just wasn't Steve Hackett. It would become their biggest selling album up to that point, thanks to the top 10 hit Follow You, Follow Me, which charted all over the world. Number 9, Trespass, their second album, but the first one that really sounded like the classic Genesis lineup with Peter Gabriel on lead vocals. This would be the last with original guitarist Anthony Phillips, who would exit because of crippling stage fright. If you watch the top 25 songs, our companion video on this channel, The Knife from this project reached number 11 on the charts. Number 8, the self-titled Genesis album. 30 years ago, it was customary for a self-titled album to be a band's debut, but Genesis called their first album From Genesis to Revelation, and it seemed a good time as any to have an album named after the band. This was the follow-up to Abacab, and even though the group released an EP 3x3 and the live album 3 Sides Live in between, they were going more commercial, and the sales really showed it. This one doubled the sales of Abacab, going 4 times platinum in the US. Number 7, Nursery Crime. It was the first album with Steve Hackett on guitar and Phil Collins on drums. And it was the first appearance of what would become the classic Genesis lineup with Peter Gabriel on lead vocals, Tony Banks on keys, guitar and bass by Mike Rutherford, and the musical box, by the way, from this project would chart at number 3 on our top 25 Genesis songs of all time. That video you'll find on this channel. Number 6, Foxtrot, their fourth and the follow-up to Nursery Crime. Their debut didn't chart in the UK. The next one, Trespass, peaked at number 98. Then Nursery Crime reached number 39. But Foxtrot from 1972 became the highest charting at that point, reaching number 12. They certainly were on the right track. And the project also contained the number 1 song from our top 25 Genesis songs of all time, the classic 23-minute Supper's Ready, known as one of the greatest prog pieces of all time. Number 5, Duke, the concept LP about Albert's disappointments and his obsessions. Some might be surprised at an album that some consider their last-ditch effort of true prog, even though it did have pop elements, would get more votes than the groundbreaking Foxtrot. Keep in mind, Duke only beat that album by 47 votes. While Foxtrot had Supper's Ready at number 1 and Watcher of the Skies at number 8, Duke really did come up with respectable votes. In our songs countdown, it had number 15, Behind the Lines, number 20, Duke's Travels, Turn It On Again reached number 22, and Duchess number 25. Number 4, Wind and Wuthering, their 8th studio album and the last full project with guitarist Steve Hackett. Like its predecessor, A Trick of the Tail, it went gold in multiple countries. This would be the second Genesis album with Phil Collins on lead vocals, and they were still painting with a similar brush, I say similar, to the days of Peter Gabriel at that point. But some fans didn't accept it because it wasn't Peter Gabriel, and they were going more pop. The album did have 3 songs in our top 25, number 10, Afterglow, Blood on the Rooftops was number 12, and One for the Vine made it to number 21. Number 3, A Trick of the Tail. Of all the Phil Collins-led Genesis albums, this one received the most votes. 375 votes separated Trick to Wind and Wuthering. So it clearly outperformed its follow-up and had 5 tunes in our top 25. Number 9, Ripples, 14, Entangled, 16, Dance on a Volcano, and Squonk reached number 18, Los Endos, number 23. Number 2, with 14% of the 11,836 votes, the concept album, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. It's the story of Rael, a poor Puerto Rican boy from the Bronx. Needless to say, mayhem ensues and a lot of adventures. It was an ambitious project for the band and a difficult one to finish. Their only double studio album, with a few concert favorites in our top 25. Number 5 was Carpet Crawlers, number 7, In the Cage, and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, number 13. Let's not forget number 26, Back in NYC. Number 1, and no surprise to real Genesis fans or prog fans, Selling England by the Pound. Even though it only beat The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by 13 votes, we should point out that The Lamb had more than twice the amount of tunes at 23 than Selling England did at just 8 songs. So that says a lot about the power of this project. They were at the same fruitful era of Genesis, with all 5 members in the classic lineup, with Selling England in 73 and The Lamb the following year. But then Peter Gabriel was gone. The fact that he left at such a groundbreaking period made it difficult for some fans to accept Phil Collins. They may not have received the acclaim artistically with Phil, but they certainly got more commercial sales. Selling England by the Pound remains one of the most satisfying, inventive prog albums of all time. You can listen to it 1,000 times and still discover new tasty little sojourns. It was also the highest charting Peter Gabriel-led Genesis album, reaching number 3 on the UK charts and number 31 in the US. The project had 3 songs in our top 10 of our top 25 Genesis songs of all time. Dancing with the Moonlit Night at number 6, The Cinema Show at number 4, and number 2, Firth of Fifth. 11,836 votes last year. Thank you for everyone who went on our website and voted. We're going to have a lot more polls coming up this year. These videos take a lot of work. We love doing them, but they take time. So anyone who's waiting for our other ones to come up, we've got an Elton John one coming up and a few more on the way before we do another poll. But thank you for everyone who voted. We appreciate that. And as we said in our last video, we really asked prog fans to answer these questions. We wrote down every single Genesis song they ever recorded, EPs. They had to be studio tracks. And we got so much response, so thanks again for voting. But after we did the top 25 Genesis songs, by the way, that video is on this channel, we had to come up with the top Genesis studio albums. And this was a lot of fun. We really appreciated everything. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. That'd be cool. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Book.